Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat. I'm one of your hosts, Zach Owens, and joining me as always is Aaron Capo.
Hello.
And I'm dying to know how far you are in God of War Ragnarok.
So Thanksgiving was this past week. Or I guess it wasn't this past week, but I was busy this week at work. But that's all to say that I haven't had a lot of time to play, but I have reached the somewhat late game area, of the crater in Vanaheim, where like all the dragons are. So I believe I'm pretty much 100% done with that crater. The last time I ended, I had done that thing where you like open up the dam, and I've gone across the river, and I'm about to go back to Sindri's house to do stuff. So that is my current location.
It took me by surprise when you like get through to the crater and then all of a sudden it like opens up and there's just like a ton to do there. A huge area. It was it really surprised me because I was like, I don't know. It seemed like the other areas like had a few side quests to do, but then is that Vanaheim? I forget which place that is.
Now I want to ask, how much of the like accessibility options did you use in your playthrough?
I don't think I use the ones that are like auto pickup stuff and like maybe auto vault over stuff.
You know what I'm using is boss checkpoints. And
really?
I gotta say, it has made it a much more enjoyable game when I turn that on, because it basically saves your place whenever you're doing like a mini boss. So, for instance, when I got to the crater, there's that, I forget what those things are called, those balls that are like all purple. You know what I'm talking about? Those enemies. It's like a big ball, and then you have to...
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
So I fought that one, and I got like halfway and then died, and I was like, oh man, I really don't want to have to do this all over again. It took so long. And then when I respawned, because I had that boss checkpoints on, like half of his tower things were already destroyed, so I could just pick back up.
Nice.
It's a great feature, I gotta say. If you just want to do story and you don't really care about like, you know, going hardcore mode or whatever, it's been really nice to just turn that on. I've died a couple of times, and it's like usually in a mini boss like arena, and having that turned on and like being able to just pick up right where I left off, but I have full health again, has been just like very pleasant.
Yeah, they have a lot of really nice accessibility features in the game.
That's great.
And one of the things I really like about it is that like you're kind of not locked out at all from like trophies and achievements if you choose to play on like the easy difficulty or whatever, and you turn on a bunch of those accessibility features. Like it's not going to be like, oh, you can't get, like you couldn't platinum this.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanted to.
It's made for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to force you to try to like bang your head against the wall to beat it on like the hardest difficulty if you don't want to. So very nice feature. Speaking of God of War Ragnarok, Sony released information this last week about the fact that God of War Ragnarok is the fastest selling first party launch game in PlayStation history.
I believe it.
It's doing quite well.
What would it be up against? What's another first-party game that they launched?
I mean, like previous God of War games?
Yeah, that's true. Was Uncharted was that first-party, or they didn't own that when it first started coming out, did they?
I don't know, because that's Naughty Dog, and they don't.
Do they own Naughty Dog right now?
I don't know if they own Naughty Dog. They might. I'm not sure, actually. That's a good question. But yeah, it's so good. And
it's so good.
Their trailers for the game were so well done.
Excellent marketing, I gotta say. Did you see that weird Ben Stiller thing?
I saw that it was out. I didn't watch it though.
It was weird. I didn't watch all of it, but it was like a weird thing. And I don't know why they did that, but I mean, whatever, more power to them.
It seemed funny that it exists, but I didn't watch it. But we did not pick up Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Correct.
And it seems like that was the correct choice because Nintendo is even issuing refunds for the game because it's performing so poorly on the Switch.
It's crazy. I've seen both ways. I've seen people saying this is a super unoptimized game, but I'm loving it because of all the little monsters. Yeah. But I've also seen people being like, this is unplayable at times. So I don't know. I think if you're a Pokemon fan, you can put up with it. But if you're someone who's interested in getting into Pokemon for the first time, you've heard hey, this is the first truly open world Pokemon game. Check it out. It might not be for you, but I don't know. I also saw a video of a guy using a Switch emulator on his computer, and the game ran flawlessly because he was using computer specs. And he was like, yeah, this is solely the problem of not optimizing, and the hardware is just a little bit too old, and Game Freak just didn't spend enough time optimizing it. So,
well, and I wonder about them because maybe it's their engine because they used to make these exclusively for the 3DS.
Yeah.
Did they beef up that engine for the Switch, or what's going on there?
But I don't know. That's a good question.
It's one of those things where I see reviews and listening to people who have played it. They're it's maybe the best Pokemon game ever, except it just runs so poorly that it's unplayable at times.
Well, and they came out and they said they're willing to work and fix these bugs, but who knows? They're on such a pace.
I wonder how much you can do for those performance issues, though.
And even by the time they're done, they're just going to be moving on to the next one. They push one of these out every year, it seems like.
Well, there were 2 Pokemon games that came out this year.
It's true. So, yeah, so by the time they finish, hey, Scarlet and Violet are in a playable state, they're already going to be marketing the next one,
Yeah, I think they need to slow down the pace of Pokemon releases, and maybe that would prevent something like this, but
it's a cash cow.
It is a cash cow. And I did listen to the McElroy's Game podcast, and they had on one of their kids who was the target audience for this game. And of course, the kids don't care at all about performance issues. They're hey, Pokemon, it's fun and I like it. So it is sort of exclusively an issue that people our age who maybe grew up with Pokemon
the elderly
are upset about. Yeah. Elderly people like ourselves. How do you think elderly people like ourselves feel about the Mario movie?
I watched the second trailer, which came out this week, a couple of times, and I am not looking forward to it, I have to say. I saw an article that was you see a lot of movies where one performance will carry a movie. And I think this is an instance where this is what the article's viewpoint was. That's a thing that exists, but this is an instance where it's the opposite, which you don't see often. Everyone else's performance is going to be holding up Chris Pratt's, who again, I think is whatever. He did the Wahoo in this trailer, so that's fine. But I'm so much more interested in
weird.
Seth Rogen's performance, and I think Jack Black is a great Bowser, I have to say. And Luigi, Charlie Day is just doing Charlie Day's voice, which is fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the problem I have with it is I just hear Charlie Day and I just hear Chris Pratt. I don't
It's a problem. And I still feel we haven't really gotten a full face, full... What am I trying to say? We haven't really seen the full picture of what he's trying to do yet. We've only heard snippets. I want to hear a minute of uninterrupted dialogue to see what he's really doing. But it just seems like he is doing Chris Pratt, which is, it's a choice, I guess, or it's a lack of one, maybe. But I don't know.
Well, the animation. I also wonder if at the start of it, it's going to be just Chris Pratt, and by the end, he's full Charles Martinet.
Oh, you think he's somehow converting?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, because you said, we've heard snippets where he just sounds like Chris Pratt, and then we've heard others where he's going Wahoo and trying to sound like Mario, and Like, is that just gonna phase in and out, like come and go every now and then? He sounds like Mario, and the rest of the time he just sounds like Chris Pratt. Because I feel like that would also be a little distracting.
I don't know. And we have a basic idea of the plot now, it seems like. Bowser is one by one taking over these different islands, and it seems like maybe Mario and Luigi are in whatever sort of real world they're in. Like, I think there's a promotional shot where there's an American flag in the background. So they're like in New York. And then they get sucked into some sort of warp pipe and then spit out and separated. And then it seems like Luigi's going to get captured and sort of be the damsel in distress. And Mario.
So is my prediction correct?
Which one?
I was texting you my predictions of how the plot would unfold.
I think it is. It's going to be. So he meets up with Peach and she's like, this is happening and we need to fix it. And then they need to get the Kongs' help. I think the Kongs are going to be integral. Like, there's a shot where they're looking at all of the islands on a map, and you can see in the top. I did watch a Game Explain video that pointed out a bunch of like stuff about this trailer, so I am a little bit more knowledgeable now. But you can see Bowser's Island, and you can see an island that used to be the Penguins Island from the first trailer. Like, it looks like a lava island, but on the very rim of it, you
like
can
a
see
Mario game overworld map, basically.
And then there's an island that looks like a Kong's Island. And then there's the Peach Island, and then there's like a sand island. So my theory is that like Peaches can be like, well, we need the Kong's help for some reason. Maybe they have access to Rainbow Road or whatever, or there's some reason we need Donkey Kong's help. So they go there, and they're like, well, Mario's got to do all these like tasks in order for us to like think he's cool or whatever. So he like fights Donkey Kong or whatever, and then they eventually become friends, and then they're all like, let's go get Bowser. And at some point also, they like Peach is going to be like, well, you're just a plumber, you need to like, learn our ways or whatever.
Learn how to be Jumpman.
Yeah, learn how to be Jumpman. I guarantee someone will say Jumpman in this movie, actually. That's a good prediction.
Yeah. And it does look like it's going to be sort of a greatest hits of like different Mario games.
I would not be
like, oh, I recognize this part.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he plays golf at one point.
Oh, really?
I mean, he's in a Mario Kart.
It could be like even a sort of, sizzle reel type thing where they're cutting through him doing lots of different things and like adjusting to.
That actually is even more likely. I would say there's like maybe there's a training montage and then someone else is like, oh yeah, we also have to do sports maybe. And so we see him doing golf and tennis and whatever version of weird soccer they did. And I could definitely see that.
I bet that happens. Yeah. I don't know. I will watch it. I'm not like hotly anticipating it because I also expect to be a little bit disappointed by it. But
the more I have watched the trailer and I watched that Game Explain video about all the little teasers and tidbits, I'm getting a little bit more excited about it. I still don't know if I'm going to go to the theater to see it, but I guess it just depends on how I feel that day. But I don't know. I want to see another trailer where we get like a full face of Mario talking for like 30 seconds. Because right now I feel like we haven't like seen the forest for the trees yet. And I really want to see if he is in fact doing anything. Because sometimes there's a little hint of something. And I am so curious about the end result of all of this. Like, I don't know. He was so confident in that one video. Like, you're going to see this Mario voice. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. And if it is just his voice, then that's like, I guess a good prank. But I don't know if this is like a good zone for pranks.
I feel like that's just marketing speak.
Yeah.
Like every movie is like nothing you've ever seen before.
That's true.
When really most movies are pretty similar to other movies.
I gotta say, and also I'm very excited for how this movie ends, because if Nintendo is like all in on stuff, I wonder if they will realize the benefit of doing a cinematic universe and something crazy happens at the end of this. Some other IP walks in. That's going to be very exciting to see.
How crazy would it be if like Pikachu shows up?
I would love it. That would be great.
Like, I'm trying to imagine Mario and Pikachu in the same image.
I think Kirby could definitely show up.
They've already done a Pokemon movie.
It's true. So. We've never seen an like quotes IRL version of Kirby.
True.
So that would be crazy. I would. I mean, what would really
Star Fox?
Star Fox would be cool. What would really blow the roof off of the house is if like Link made an appearance or something.
Yeah.
Or if Peach was like, I got to talk to my other princess friend, and she gets out a little cell phone she calls Princess Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, they would do it in like a more magical way, but yes.
No, she would have
that
cell phone,
would be very cool. Or if like, yeah, what if like, I'm trying to imagine, so like the R-Wings from Star Fox like fly overhead, and also Samus's ship like lands or whatever.
Now that would be... Because, I mean, they have the formula. We've talked about this so many times on this podcast. They have the formula already laid out. Their Smash Brothers is a thing. And there's been, like, they could do the plot from the most recent Smash Brothers, Ultimate. They could do that, whatever, Starside Emissary or whatever it was from Brawl, or I don't remember which one that one was. But, I mean, these characters have gotten together in other things. So I think it's what everybody wants. And they want other... I mean, based on how... I don't know, I guess we'll have to see how this movie does. But if this movie does well, I mean, Nintendo could get into the business of movies, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Smash Brothers is a good name for a game. It's not a great movie title. But maybe
it's a great name for a burger place.
That's true. But we can move on. I mean, I feel like they'll have more trailers for this thing.
There's going to be at least one more, because this is coming out in like April, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of time for them to do another trailer. Also, maybe this was the Nintendo Direct they were talking about. Was that? I thought maybe they said something about another Nintendo Direct, or maybe that was this one that
I didn't hear it. Yeah, I mean, this technically was a Nintendo Direct. Like, you can watch. There's like a slightly longer version of it instead of just the trailer where Miyamoto comes out and he's like, hey, what's up? We changed, like, Donkey Kong looks weird now or whatever. Here's Seth Rogen to talk about it. And then at the end, he's like, wasn't that cool? I guess we'll see you later. So, I mean, it's technically a direct.
Well, let's talk about The Witcher 1 remake.
The Witcher.
And how it's going to be open world.
Now, I don't know a lot about The Witcher. I know, I guess, the most about The Witcher 3, because when that came out, everyone said it was such an amazing game, and I watched people play it for a while, but I didn't realize The Witcher 3 seemed open world to me, and I didn't realize previous games were not.
Yeah, The Witcher 3 is open world, and I don't think the previous two are, correct me if I'm wrong. But
that's surprising to me.
Certainly, the first one is not, because the remake, it's like a big news item that the Witcher 1 remake will be open world.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think it's cool. This is, to me, like what Sony's kind of doing with, you know, trying to bring The Last of Us up to like modern standards or whatever. This is just like what we're doing now with games. Like, let's remake stuff and bring it up to a modern standard.
To put this, I mean, if this was linear though, and they're making it open world, that's going to be a stark change, I would think. That's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to really change The Witcher 1 quite a bit. And it could just be like the story is the same, but like they basically do it in the style of The Witcher 3. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know how different those games are from game to game. But they basically tried to do something similar with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, where they're like, these games, like from game to game, like there is kind of mechanically a big difference between them, especially the first one to the third one. So they tried at least a little bit to remake the combat and like the UI and all of that to be a little bit more in line with Mass Effect 3. It's not like they didn't remake the game from the ground up to basically look and feel like the third one, but they changed just a little bit, just tweaked it enough to be like, it's a little bit more in line with the other two now. So I mean, I wonder how much of that will happen with the Witcher remake. So, how do you feel about Overwatch?
You know, I don't super care about it. You know what? That's a good summation of how my feelings on it.
Well, the second season is going to start on December 6th, which I think is next week as we're recording this. they announced a new map, a battle pass, a holiday event, and like more stuff coming out. I think there's a new character that's coming as well. They have like a whole like information graphic up that Game Informer was sharing about all the stuff that's coming, and it's supposed to be the second season of Overwatch 2 is like sort of Greek mythology themed.
Ooh.
So like all the different skins and everything are going to sort of tie into that. Seems kind of cool. I enjoyed what I played of Overwatch 2, and I may still jump back in and play some more of it, but I'm curious to see what they add for the holiday events. So
speaking
maybe
of,
I'll report back on that later.
Speaking of seasons changing, I believe that the next season of Fortnite is going to be happening fairly soon. There's an end of season 3 thing that's going on, I think this weekend as we're recording this, and then it will transition, I believe, over into like a new map and everything. And I might check out the new season of Fortnite.
Really?
I don't know, man. I listen to that Get Played podcast every once in a while, and they checked out Fortnite during October as like a gag kind of, and some of them got like really into it. And to hear them talk about it, because none of them had ever really played a battle royale, and to hear them, I guess technically one of them had played the Final Fantasy one that I was going to check out, where you can like ride a chocobo. But to hear them talk about it, it's just like, it makes me nostalgic for playing PUBG back in the day. And like, it was such a unique experience. And if it's going to switch over and be a completely new map and everything, I feel like it would be a good time to dive in. So I might check out Fortnite and report back.
I would be very interested in hearing your thoughts on Fortnite.
I mean, I got this computer that I built, that I basically built for Starfield, but that's not out yet. So I got to do something with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can play Fortnite on your phone.
It's true.
Nobody wants to do that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So speaking of, we got another thing in here. I almost moved on to the games that are out this week.
Yeah, I threw this in here. I thought this was interesting. Have you ever played any of the Amnesia games?
I have not.
I played the first one, The Dark Descent, is that what it is? For a while until I had to stop playing it because it was too scary for me. And they came out with a second one that I think was called like A Machine for Pigs that I think was okay, but people were maybe a little disappointed in. They're coming out with another game, Amnesia the Bunker. And this game is interesting for a couple different reasons. It gives you a gun. First of all, which Amnesia games are not in the business of giving you weapons. You usually just have to hide and like maintain your sanity. But also, it is somewhat open world, which is weird. And I don't know what that means for a game like this. But it's interesting. And I will not play it, but I know a streamer who might play it, and I'm interested for that aspect of it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Amnesia Dark Descent, I feel like was a really big, like, it was in the zeitgeist for a while because it was like a very scary game. It was one of those, similar to how people used to say like, oh yeah, can this PC run Crysis? It was something like that where someone was like, oh yeah, you're like, Amnesia's like the scariest game or whatever. And so I am wondering if this is going to be a return to form or if this will be another Machine for Pigs type thing where people are somewhat disappointed. But I'm so curious to see how they've evolved the gameplay and how they've decided to make this open world. I think it'll be an interesting thing to at least read about, if not play.
Yeah, Game Informer's article on it says it's semi-open world and it will be like emergent gameplay.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
There are hardly any scripted events.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious as to how, like, what that really means.
My take on that is like their AI is pretty good. Like their monster AI, they're basically just going to drop a thing into the world and then you're just going to have to interact with it. Like it's going to see you, it's going to be able to detect you in some way. Very similar, I think, to the Alien and Alien Isolation. That a lot of that was emergent, where like you would just get into a zone, and the alien would also be in that zone, and then you just sort of had to like figure it out.
A little like the Emmys in Metroid Dread, where
yes,
they may or may not be in the zone that you're in right now, but you know it. as soon as you enter a certain area, there's a chance that it could be there.
I wonder if Metroid Dread is actually a very apt description for what this is going to be. I don't know. Like it's going to be. It's obviously not a Metroidvania, but I wonder if it's like a kind of a 3D version of that, where you go into certain zones and there are like Emmy type things that you have to avoid. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Maybe something to check out later that I might watch instead of playing, because I also don't really like spooky games that much. But let's talk about a spooky game that came out this week, the Callisto Protocol. Have you gotten a chance to watch any of this?
No, and actually, the streamer I was talking about, who I watch sometimes, who I think will play Amnesia the Bunker, is doing a playthrough of Callisto Protocol. So I will probably check that out at some point.
I've watched some of it, yeah.
What have you... I've heard mixed reviews about it.
The Steam reviews are very bad right now. It is, like, I watched some of the Digital Foundry video as well, talking about performance, and it seems like if you're playing this on console, specifically PS5, you are probably fine. Like, you're probably not having a bad time of it. But on PC... the thing just does not run well, and it doesn't seem to matter like what your hardware specs are. It's just like across the board, it's not running well.
Well, and I think also some of it is review bombing, because they came out with that thing where there were like certain death animations are blocked behind a paywall. You have to pay to see certain death animations. Yeah, that was the thing that came out.
I did not hear about that. That's crazy.
It is crazy, and I don't understand the reasoning behind that, but that is if you want to see all of the crazy death animations, you need to pay extra.
I hadn't heard that, but that is insane if that's the case. But no, there's like big, like recognizable Hollywood actors in this game, and
who's in it?
They did motion cap. That guy from Transformers,
Mark Wahlberg.
That looks no. No, earlier Transformers. The guy that looks a little bit like Timothy Olyphant. What's his name? Josh Duhamel?
Oh, yeah. I know that guy.
That guy is the main character.
I didn't know
that. There's a few others. Like, I know we were talking before about how the Karen Fukuhara, the actress in... what is that? Suicide Squad and like a couple other things. The Boys, yeah, she's another like main character in it, and so there's some recognizable Hollywood actors in it. It seems like most people who are like playing it on console are like into it and are not sure why it's like getting such like mixed reviews, but like the critics are like, I mean, this thing doesn't run well on certain platforms, and you have to like recognize that if you're reviewing it. But also it seems pretty derivative of Dead Space. And
I mean, I watched like some footage from it, and it is almost indistinguishable at points from Dead Space, like even to the point of having your health on the back of your neck.
Yeah, so it is doing Dead Space but under a different name basically, and it, from what I've read in the reviews, it doesn't necessarily like do anything that would be like as good or better than what Dead Space already did.
Yeah, it's not taking the formula and running with it. It's just sort of taking the formula.
No, like if you're a fan and you're playing it and you're enjoying it, you may very well get into like the story and the characters and the universe, and maybe you like Dead Space enough that like, whatever, I'm into Dead Space, I'm into what this is doing as well, and that might be fine for you, which is why I think there's such a disparity between like the critic reviews and like the actual like player reviews. But anyway, another game that came out this last week is Marvel's Midnight Suns. I have to say, I played Mario and Rabbids, and I played Marvel Snap. And everybody is making comparisons to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I loved. So now I'm thinking, do I care about this game? And so, yeah, I've watched some of it, and I may play this. I don't know.
I like the idea of XCOM games a lot. I never really got into them, but I watched a playthrough. There's an old channel I used to watch that is still happening called the Yogscast. And they used to do a thing where these two guys would play the old XCOM, like from the very old days. And one person, because the whole thing about XCOM was half of it is combat encounters and half of it is like managing your base or whatever. So one person would be the combat guy and one person would be the base guy. And that was very enjoyable to watch, and I spent a lot of hours watching that, and it made me get really into the genre. But I've never actually, I mean, aside from Mario and Rabbids, I've never really played these like tactical style games. But I mean, watching trailers for this, the production values are so high, and it's crazy. I mean, when you get out of the cinematic universe of Marvel, you forget that like, oh yeah, the X-Men are also around, and like Blade is here and stuff like that. And so it's crazy to see all these characters walking around and like being playable and communicating with each other. It seems like a really cool game, actually.
Yeah, people are into it. And it is like, so we reference XCOM because it's for Axis. So it's the makers of XCOM. And this was supposed to be, or it was pitched as Marvel XCOM. But it is... like they traded in sort of a little bit their system they had going for XCOM to a card-based system because they were like, we tried making it Marvel XCOM, but like it didn't really make sense to have like, you know, a 90% chance to successfully, you know, hit somebody on an attack and for, you know, Spider-Man to just like miss his shots all the time. Like that didn't really make sense. So They did switch it to a card-based system, which I know you are against.
Yeah, I don't love a card-based combat system, I have to say.
In seeing the reviews for this game, suddenly it kind of clicked in my head why people are so into card-based games and why we're seeing like more and more of them as opposed to just like the standard turn-based system that you might have in like a turn-based RPG or something like that. And it's because... in those types of games where you have like a turn-based system, it can get very stale over time where it's just like, okay, I know I'm going to use these attacks and in these orders. And so I'm just going to mash the button until everything happens and the fight is over. And you kind of get into a little bit of a rut where you're just doing the same things over and over again. Whereas a card-based system switches it up enough that like you don't know necessarily what cards are going to flip. And so you kind of have to be a little bit more on your toes in terms of like your strategy and how you approach different fights. And so,
yeah, I could see that.
Suddenly it makes a little bit more sense in my head. And I've never been like super into like deck builders or anything like that, but I've also never been super anti card-based systems. And the one in Marvel's Midnight Suns is a little bit more character based where each character has their own like mini deck. So you're not dealing with like an overall deck, which makes sense because you can swap characters in and out. So they would each have to have their own sets of abilities. So
that's the part that's always so daunting to me about deck builders is like, there is a correct answer, I feel like a lot of times. And so I feel I often need to like go and see what the meta is and see like what I need to basically build the perfect deck. And that I feel like takes a lot of fun out of it. But it being like character based, it makes it a little less daunting where you can just like build per character.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how some of that works and I might check it out and report back on it. It might be like the game I end up playing over Christmas this year. So we'll see. Another game that came out recently or since we last talked on a podcast was that Warhammer 40k Darktide. That's like a cooperative like PvE sort of survival game, a little bit akin to something like Left 4 Dead. And it is on Game Pass, so I did download it, but I haven't played it because I've never played a Warhammer game before. But like earlier this week, like everybody was streaming it, and it did seem kind of fun. And the part of me that put like hundreds of hours into Mass Effect 3's cooperative online mode, that part of me is like, I enjoy cooperative games like that, PvE games. It's basically why I want Overwatch 2 to actually come out, so I can play like the PvE stuff.
Yeah, really.
So I am curious about this game. I might try it out and let you know if it's any good. But
do let me know. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind jumping in if it is. Similarly, I saw a ton of people streaming it earlier this week, and I was like, man, this is like very much in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, people are into it. Yeah, so it's on Game Pass, so I downloaded it, and I will maybe check it out this week, and we'll see. Other things we've been playing, maybe before we get to God of War Ragnarok?
That's pretty much all I've been playing is God of War. I thought about downloading Marvel Snap, but I haven't done it yet. And I've just been pretty much too busy to do anything else with family.
I have to say, I've probably played at least a match or two every day since I initially downloaded Marvel Snap. So I do still recommend that game if you're thinking about it.
I think I might dive in. I just haven't done it yet.
So I played Somerville, and it didn't really hit me the way it did other people, I guess. And
now, did you like Inside?
I did like Inside. I liked Little Nightmares 2, like maybe the most when it comes to like that style of like creepy side-scrolling sort of platform. Yeah. So having that as like sort of the one I hold up as like this is sort of almost the pinnacle of this style of game. Somerville, I don't think hit on that level. Like it didn't quite get there. I don't really understand what was going on. And maybe I needed to just look up a video sort of explaining everything in the ending. But I mean, I did look up one video that was like, this is how you get the good ending. And I was like, I don't know how you got there. Like what in your brain decided this is the sequence of things I need to do to do this? Like there was nothing in the game that told me, that gave me any indication that I was doing anything wrong. And so it's just like, I think I texted you after I finished it that it was like, my experience with it was, I guess you do this. And then the game's like, okay, yeah, you did it. Now you can move on to the next scene. And so I would do that and I go, okay, I guess I do this. And it's like, yeah, okay, go ahead, go to the next thing. And so I go, okay, I think maybe I do this. And they're like, no, you got the bad ending. Like, try again. I don't know. So it was one of those games that like, it wasn't that long. It was very short, and it was not like, I think the gameplay itself was not all that interesting.
How are the puzzles?
There's not much in the way of puzzles, to be honest.
Really?
There is like some stuff where it's like you can like move things around. You have this sort of special ability that will let you do that. But otherwise you're basically just moving through scenery, and every now and then you'll have to like avoid like this light that's like sort of watching you, and if you step into it you die basically. Other than that, there was maybe one puzzle that felt puzzly to me. The rest of the time it was just basically getting around, and that was about it. And I didn't find the world or even the like situation to be quite as gripping as some of the other ones of this style that I've played. So it didn't do it for me, but it is on Game Pass, and it will probably go on sale eventually. And I would say check it out if
I probably will
interested.
pick it up when it comes on Switch, I think.
Yeah. The other game I played that I wasn't super into, but I tried for maybe about 2 hours earlier this last week, was that Ghost Song game that is also on Game Pass. It's a Metroidvania with a heavy emphasis on the Metroid side of that equation. And it's also a little Souls-like, I thought, because it was like very difficult. and you're sort of putting points into different attributes, but you move around very slowly. And like I know with these games you start out with basically nothing, and you have to like build up your character in order for it to start feeling good. But this game just did not feel good to me. I don't know why, but I couldn't get into it. And maybe it's partially because over Thanksgiving I played all the way through a game called Haak or Haak. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's Haak, and it's a Metroidvania that has really flown under the radar this year.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it until you texted me about it.
Well, I don't think anybody has covered it, but I follow that Metroidvania subreddit, and people have been talking about it quite a bit in that subreddit.
I should subscribe to that subreddit.
Yeah, so I decided to check it out, and it's good. I don't know. It's I think it's a little bit more about like platforming and like exploration and like finding collectibles and stuff like that than it is maybe about like fighting bosses. There's only like a handful of bosses. And like any good Metroidvania, like the more you explore, the more stuff you find. It does a good job of like constantly rewarding you with like a new ability or like an upgrade for an existing ability. And like I would get to a boss fight and I would struggle with it, and I'd be like, okay, well clearly the answer is I just need to go explore and power up a little bit more. And you know, revisiting areas you've previously been to, but now you have like a new movement ability or like a new attack type would allow you to find more stuff to power yourself up. And it also does a nice thing where it's sort of like a quality of life thing where like outside of boss rooms or like combat areas, it will have like a little vending machine that you can interact with, and it'll be like, here's a like shield that you can buy that like will tank so much damage for you, or like here's a debuff for the boss. Like
that's great.
Do you want these help items to get through like a boss fight? And so I use some of those, but the trick to those is the more of those you buy throughout the game, the more it sort of like drops your sort of skill / difficulty rating for like completion of the game. And like that doesn't matter, it's whatever. Like if you want to play a game on easy or normal as opposed to hard, like you make that choice anyway. So this is just kind of like, if you choose not to buy any of those help items, it's like playing it through on hard, I guess. Or if you buy some of them, it's like playing it through on normal. So I thought it was an interesting approach to like difficulty.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I kind of liked that system, that it was just like they had come up with an interesting way to sort of help you out or give you the option for help if you wanted it. So that's a good game. It was on sale this like over Thanksgiving, I think.
Is it part of the Steam sale, the autumn Steam sale? Yeah,
there was a Steam sale happening. So I picked it up and couldn't put it down. I played it on Steam Deck. And so it was great to just be able to, you know, while I was on while I was, you know, on Thanksgiving break, I guess, to just be able to pick up my Steam Deck and make little bits of progress here and there. So, and then the only other thing, well, I've played a little bit more Ragnarok. Like I jumped back in earlier this week and just like went back into it to try to complete some of the stuff I hadn't done before, like side quests and some of those berserker fights. So I've just been doing some of that. And then the other thing I played is Pentiment. I am into the third act now of that game. And it is, I will say, not for everyone, but also it's very good.
So you're liking it?
Yeah, it's a lot of dialogue and not much action, but that's the kind of game it is. I mean, it's a little, I don't want to say point and click adventure, but kind of point and click adventure, because you're not necessarily like, oh, how do I, you know, advance the plot because I need to get through this door and I have to figure out like what item to use to like do this thing over here to allow me to get through the door. You're not doing stuff like that so much as you're just like everything is dialogue based. I guess you do find items and stuff in your investigation, but basically you play an artist in like the 1500s and you're in this like sort of small town in the Alps, I think, and you like are doing some commission work for the Abbey, and you're sort of getting to know like the townsfolk and the people that like the monks and everything at the Abbey, and like this murder happens, and so you're sort of a little bit the bridge between those two worlds of like the peasants and the people that live and work at the Abbey. And so you're doing the investigation basically, and you only have a certain amount of time to complete the investigation, and you have like a bunch of different leads to follow up on. And so you're going around the town and talking to different people and trying to work out who done it. And I don't know if it's saying too much, but there's like multiple murders that happen in the game. And so you're doing a lot of investigating basically. And it's very interesting. It's interesting not just because they have like, you know, real historical things sort of happening in the background, and you're sort of learning about some of this stuff, but it does a thing where if somebody makes a reference to like a person or a place or, you know, some sort of church related thing and you don't know what it is, you can hit a button and it's like zooming out the page in the book, and you can kind of look at an annotation at the bottom of the page. That's cool. And it'll explain what that is. That's and then very you cool. Zoom back in. So yeah, that was a cool feature. I don't know. I'm liking it. I'm very curious to find out like how this is going to wrap up. I also feel like I've made some wrong decisions along the way. So I'm almost curious what it would be like if I played it through a second time but made very different decisions, or like my approach to the investigation went very differently. Like I followed up different leads the next time. I'm curious because it kind of goes, or at least in my playthrough, like some things go down, especially in that second act. Like things go very poorly, or at least they went very poorly for me in my playthrough. So I'm very curious how different it'll be depending on like maybe you accuse somebody else of a murder, and so just the events and the characters who are around in the next act end up being different. Mm-hmm. So I might have to watch a video that explains everything in the end too. Because there does seem to be like this mysterious like thread puller in the background that you are not very sure who it is. And like, so I'm trying to figure out if I can solve that part of the mystery as well. But man, I would say it's pretty good.
I am interested in it, I have to say. I think it's something I would want to play with my girlfriend because I think she would be very interested in it as well.
Yeah, that would be a really good thing to play with another person.
So I might check it out. I have been watching some stuff.
Have you watched the Willow show?
Yeah, so did you watch this when you were a child?
I watched the old movie a long time ago.
I loved the old movie. We had it on VHS, and I would watch it all the time. Val Kilmer is great in it. So I was like, yeah, I'll check out this show. The first 2 episodes are out now on Disney Plus as we're recording this. And I'm going to keep watching it. It is a little bit like, I don't know. I always think about, did you ever watch that show Workaholics?
No.
Do you know what, like that Comedy Central show of those 3 guys, like Adam Devine is one of them?
I mean, I've seen like the, I guess, poster for it.
They did a thing one time in their writer's room where they wrote down like every hack phrase that they didn't want to include. And I always think about that because a lot of them are like things you wouldn't think about, but then you realize like, oh yeah, that is something that like everybody says. And I feel like there are some of those lines in this show, which is a little bit of a bummer, but
So what you're saying is it's poorly written.
Some of it is, but I love like Warwick Davis. Like as soon as he comes on the screen, he like steals it, and he has this like way. Especially, I mean, did you ever watch Life is Short?
Isn't it his show?
It is, but it takes a while in the first episode to get to him because it's kind of leading up to him. Did you ever watch Life is Short? His show on like British television?
No.
He's really funny. Like he has sort of transitioned into being more of a comedy person. And so he brings a lot of that to this role now where like a lot of his stuff is just like very dry humor that I enjoy a lot. And it's good. I'm going to continue to watch it. I think it is good. Leading up to getting Warwick Davis involved, there were some parts where I was like, man, I really wish they had done like another pass on this script and like removed some stuff. But I mean, whatever. They're also playing to like, I think a younger audience, which is maybe not for me, which I understand. And maybe young people will like this, but
I was gonna say the trailer it seemed dumb to me, but
it follows a younger group of people for a while, and they definitely do talk and I think act like current gen teenagers, which is whatever. But I think Warwick Davis elevates it to something where I want to continue to watch it. Now, I will say a bummer thing about it is Val Kilmer's not in it because obviously he is not well. He was in Top Gun, but that was possible, I think, because he was already in the area. This is shot in Wales, so I think it would be difficult. I think they said it was like impossible to figure out a way for him to get there because he's just like not doing great, which is a bummer. But they talk about him a lot, and the producers of the show I think have said that he is like an integral part of the story. So I don't really know what's going on with that. I wish he was more in it. I think he is a very cool guy. At least Matt Mardigan is a very cool guy. But I'm going to continue to watch it. They could
just recast him.
Yeah, they could. But I mean, they kind of have a Matt Mardigan style guy who is cool in it. He's like a thief guy who's helping him out, who has like a very cool cleaver that he uses. And that guy,
effectively, they recast him without using the same character.
And that guy's great. That character, I would say like my two favorite characters right now are Willow and that guy whose name I don't remember. But those two guys are great. And it has the guy from Spider-Man in it, who I initially thought I wasn't going to like in this role, but he's also kind of growing on me.
Tom Holland?
No, the guy who plays Flash in the Spider-Man games, or in the movies, I should say. But yeah, I am cautiously optimistic about it. It is like coming out weekly, so I will continue to watch, and maybe I'll fall off of it. But so far, not too bad. And then the other thing I've been doing is that Chainsaw Man is great. I have to say, I've talked about this before on the podcast, and I'm watching the anime right now. But the last episode of the anime came out, and it ended in a way that was so crazy that I was not expecting. I was like, man, I need to just start reading this. And so that's what I've done. I have an iPad that I don't use for anything, so I now just read manga on it. I got through like 100 volumes of this thing, which is not saying, I mean, a volume is not a lot of pages. It's like maybe 30 pages or whatever. But man, this it's great. It's a really interesting story, and I am now set up. I don't know how long the anime is going to go for because I think the season is getting close to concluding. I think we're at like 8 or 9 episodes. So they're going to wrap up for a while, but
is it on Crunchyroll?
It's on Crunchyroll, yeah. I think it's on all things actually because it's so popular. So you can get it on probably Netflix and Hulu as well. But it's great. The manga is great. I believe I've wrapped up the first arc, rather. It's still being written because like this is a new manga. So I've completed the first arc basically. I think that ended at like in the 80s or the 90s, and now I'm on to the new one, which is currently being written, which seems good. But a lot of interesting things that I'm really excited to see animated whenever it gets animated, but it's probably not going to be for a couple of years. I recommend it though. If you're interested in it, it is free to read because most manga you can just Google like read this manga and it will pop up to a website where you can just click through them. And that's what I was doing. And it formats really well on mobile. so I can just like click through and read this basically for free. I don't have to buy anything.
That's good.
And if you're interested in it, that's definitely a way to do it. And it is crazy. I don't know if this is true with other adaptations, but at least for the Chainsaw Man one, a lot of it is 1-to-1. Like the anime really pulls like 1-to-1 from the comics. And so I'm so interested to see when they get later on to these huge set pieces that happen. But it's very good, and I recommend it. It's a great little anime that I didn't really know anything about, and I kind of dove in, and now I love it.
I'll have to check that out. I'm interested. Did you watch the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special?
No, I don't. I don't think I care about that.
I was going to say, I'm not going to sub to Disney Plus to watch it. So
I'm a little marveled out. I will watch that new Paul Rudd Quantanium or whatever, because I like Paul Rudd. And obviously I'll watch any Spider-Man stuff that comes out, because we've talked about this thing on the podcast before, but I love a thing where somebody has a secret. That's why I like a lot of like holiday stuff, because someone is secretly Santa Claus always. But
oh, speaking of Santa Claus, did you see that? What is that Christmas movie with David Harbour as Santa?
That looks crazy to me. Yeah, Violent Night.
That looks insane.
Yeah, I'm interested.
I kind of want to watch that.
But the place where Spider-Man left off, basically, spoilers for the last Spider-Man, nobody knows who he is anymore. And so he's going to have a big time secret for the next one. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm good. I'm all marveled out a little bit. I'm fine watching them at my house, but I don't know that I need to go to a theater to see them anymore.
That's one of the things that has surprised me about my interest in Marvel's Midnight Suns is I could not care less about any Marvel movie or TV show at this point. Like, I have zero desire to keep watching more Marvel stuff, but for whatever reason, I really want to play that game. So, but yeah, I'm kind of the same way where it's just like, I'm marveled out. I can't take any more shows.
I didn't put this into the show notes, but there's something else. Did you ever read Neuromancer back in the day?
I think so. Is that, I forget which one that is.
It's sort of, I mean, it's like the first kind of cyberpunk novel where like a guy, it's actually very similar to The Matrix in a lot of ways, where like a guy is a hacker who's kind of just like hanging around, and then
I vaguely remember that
a girl comes and is like, "Hey, we need to go do this thing." But The Matrix is in it. I think it's the first instance of someone saying cyberspace is in that book, and they do call something The Matrix, even though it isn't. It's like much more theater of the mind. It's not like 1-to-1, like you drop into place and you look like how you look and stuff. But some said unfilmable, and it was in development for a long time, all throughout the 90s and the 2000s and things like that. Never got more than like pre-production. Apple TV Plus, I guess, is making or thinking about making a Neuromancer show. I think it would work better as a show as opposed to a movie. And they might get Miles Teller to be the main guy in it.
Really?
Which is interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
I subbed to Apple TV Plus just for Severance, and then I unsubscribed to it. And I'm planning on resubbing to it when Severance comes out again. But I would sub for Neuromancer because it's like one of my favorite books. And
I was going to say that might be the one thing that would get me to sub to Apple TV Plus.
It's crazy. Like the two books I read in high school that had a huge impact on me are Neuromancer and Snow Crash. And Amazon owns the rights to Snow Crash, and Ringworld as well. Amazon owns the rights to Ringworld. Mm-hmm. They just haven't done anything with them. Like those stories came out years and years ago that Amazon TV Studios purchased Ringworld and Snow Crash as IPs.
I remember that.
And there's just like nothing, there's been no movement on them. But Neuromancer is something I'm so interested to see how much money they throw at it, because towards the end of that book, some crazy stuff happens and it would require some money to accomplish. So I'm interested to see. Actually, here's something else. I don't know if they would do it one season or if they would want to try to stretch it out to multiple seasons. The story is so compact. I feel like you could do it in like a 12 episode thing, but I guess I don't know what the plan would be. But interesting thing to look out for.
I would hope that they do a better job adapting that than Netflix did with
Altered Carbon.
what is the name? Yeah, Altered Carbon.
That is a real bummer. Altered Carbon, that series is like my favorite series. Richard K. Morgan, all three of those books are just so nice, so good to read. Like his prose are so nice, and he has such interesting ideas. The world is so rich, and they really did not do a great job.
They really botched that show.
They did. I've talked about it before.
If you watched that show and you liked it, go read the books and realize how much better the books are.
It's alarming, the changes they made to it. It like makes it such a worse story. They've shrunk that world so much. Like it's such a, I feel like it's so easy to fall into that trap where like, oh, let's make everything center around the main character about this world, where in fact you want to do the opposite. You want this character to just be living in a world that feels like it's alive, but they instead shrunk every plot point to just be like, oh, this directly involves you, which I feel like is not the way to do it.
Yeah, you want your universe to feel expansive, and it does not in that show. Also, a lot of their changes felt geared around trying to make it more like, you know, like a teen novel, basically, as opposed to like an adult novel. Where a lot of the changes just made it feel a little bit generic, like teen dystopian fiction, where like even when they go to like the woodsy area and they have the people there, I was just like, this just feels like I've seen this before, but not in like a really dumb
it was such a movie, a crazy 180 where like they revealed it and I was like, man, this is great. And then the first blurb about it was like, the main character is part of a resistance unit that hates the technology of stacks, like changing consciousnesses or whatever. And I was like, what is happening? That's not this book. They made him as like a revolutionary. A little bit. Yeah. They did like the opposite of what the book actually was. And then when they revealed that his like girlfriend invented stack technology, I was like, this is awful.
Yeah. It made no sense and was very, very bad. Did you watch all of Andor?
You know, I didn't. I have only heard good things about it, and I've heard a lot of people saying it's like the best that Star Wars has ever been. I mean, people say Rogue One is great, and it was too sad for me, and I think that this is also too sad for me, but I have seen clips from later episodes where I'm like, man, this does seem really good. Like I saw a scene with that Sarsgaard guy. I don't know what his character is called, Lauren or something. But there's a scene where he like escapes from this Imperial cruiser that is like just like in a vacuum is like a very good piece of Star Wars. And so I don't know. I'm aware of some of the plots of the episodes just because I read some stuff from Wikipedia, but it does seem too sad for me, but I will acknowledge that it is probably very good.
I mean, I have like goofed on this show because like that the character Cassian Andor is just like was such a forgettable person from that movie that I also didn't particularly like. And so I was like, well, who cares about a show revolving around this character that we know is already dead?
That's the thing though, is like you're going to get all this character progression, you're going to fall in love with this character, and then I think they're probably it's going to be a 1-to-1. He's going to walk off screen towards the beginning of Rogue One, and you're going to know he's about to die, and that makes me very sad.
Well, and because I've also heard good things about it, but I also wonder if it's coming from the same people that also liked Rogue One, which I thought was a not good movie. I don't know why people like that movie as much as they do. There's some of the writing and like plot points in that movie are just downright stupid. Like the scene where I think he's like a pilot guy goes and Forrest Whitaker like is like, hey, if I, stick this crazy octopus thing on you, your mind will go to mush and you'll tell me the truth and everything I want to know. And so he's like, oh, well, that seems bad. It's like the pitch meeting guy where he's like, well, how is he going to get out of this one? Well, super easy, barely an inconvenience, because he does the thing to him and his mind goes to mush. But then what's her face shows up And she's like, hey, you're the pilot. You remember me? And he's like, oh, yeah. Hey, he just like snaps out of it and he's good to go. Like, it's just like stuff like that that's just like so dumb. And that movie, I feel like, is kind of full of stuff like that.
I still maintain it should have been more of an Ocean's 11. I think it would have been cooler if everyone had a skill and you set the plan up and you like have to get into like a big, not a casino obviously, but some sort of fortress. And I think that would have been very cool. I know it makes me like basic, but I like movies that have happy endings, and I wanted them to like escape somehow, but unfortunately they all died. Spoilers for this movie, but they all die. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, and it's one of those other things that I think the reason why Disney Star Wars has sort of gotten into such a rut that they just like stopped all movies in the Star Wars universe is that their only ambition for the Star Wars movies was what was like one line that was in like the original trilogy. Okay, how do we make a movie about that? And it's just like, you don't have to spell every single little thing out. Like, do something else. Like, do something actually interesting. And like, I don't know. I have not enjoyed anything Disney has done with Star Wars.
Mandalorian is great.
Yeah, Mandalorian. I did watch the first season of that, and I didn't like it at first because it seemed like they were just it was episodic instead of like a continuous storyline. But the more you watch it, the more it does kind of become a continuous storyline. And so by the end of that first season, I was actually on board with it. But I haven't watched the second season of it.
I liked the second season. I liked the Boba Fett show, even though part of the Boba Fett show was just back to being Mandalorian, which is fine with me because I love the Mandalorian. I was
going to say, I heard the Boba Fett show was also not good.
I liked his initial... I was into it, and I also like the theme for it a whole lot, the music theme. But there are 2 episodes in the Boba Fett show that are just the Mandalorian, which again is fine with me because I love the Mandalorian. But yeah, I don't know. At some point I might watch Andor because I do think that it probably is great, but I don't know. I just it would be great if they revealed in the second season of Andor, like, hey, I invented this teleporting technology, but I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And then they cut to the end of Rogue One, and before like the blast happens, he's like, hey, I have this teleport technology, let's get out of here. And then he does that, and then cut to them being alive. That would make me watch the entire series.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I would love that.
That would be a real twist. Do you have any desire whatsoever to watch Rings of Power?
You know,
because I do not. But I also already know everything that basically happens in that show.
My girlfriend loves Lord of the Rings, and so there might come a time where we're like, you know, we have this, like, we have Amazon Prime or whatever. Let's just watch it. So I might watch it someday, but right now I don't have any burning need to.
The pitch meeting guy released his pitch meeting about it, and it seems like laughably bad in a lot of ways. And I've heard basically nothing but bad things about it.
Oh, really?
They spent a lot of money on it. I think it was like the most expensive TV show ever made.
More than, I feel like they did I famously have not watched the final season of The Expanse because I'm saving it for whatever reason. But that...
You should watch it.
I know, I need to watch it, and I'm very excited. Actually, maybe I'll watch that. It's coming up. But that had a bunch of money in it, didn't it?
I don't think they spent that much on it.
Really?
I mean, they may have. They probably spent more on it than was spent on it while it was like under Sci-Fi, like coming out on Sci-Fi Channel, but not in comparison to Rings of Power. Like, famously, there are many articles about how this is the most expensive TV show, like the most money spent on a TV show ever. And maybe there will never be a show that spends so much money. And it seems to have been all for naught, because not only, like, I've also seen articles about how not only is the show bad, but like interest really waned as the show kept going to the point where they were not, like, the viewership fell off in a huge way from like episode to episode. So it seems, I don't know what they're gonna do. Like,
did it get renewed for a second season?
I think so. I think they even, I saw an article about how they had basically benched the writers for the show. I don't know what that means going forward, if they're going to do something completely different with the next season, but they've basically sidelined the writers because it has been kind of a massive disaster for them. So I can't say I would recommend it. In fact, I would say probably don't watch it, but anything else? Or do we want to have your parting wisdom?
My parting wisdom, I watched the scene from the movie Stargate last night where Daniel Jackson solves the cartouche and they put in the sequence of runes or whatever for the first time. That movie's great. And Stargate SG-1 is a good show, but man, Stargate the movie is also great, even though it's not the same characters. I think
it's the same characters, just not the same actors.
I've been getting a lot of Stargate recommendations, I think, because I've been watching Best of Teal'c compilations because of God of War.
Yeah.
Teal'c is a great character, and
he is,
as is Kratos.
I need to watch more of that show.
I would say if you haven't seen Stargate, it's a great little 90s movie that, it's got some Kurt Russell in it, it's got some James Spader, it's got, it's like a mid-budget 90s movie. I think it's a worth a watch. It's good, I think. And the theme for it is so memorable and good. The music is so good, and they use that to good
they use it in the show.
TV show. Yeah.
I was going to say,
my parting wisdom is to go watch Stargate the movie.
I haven't watched it in years, but I do want to go back and like continue marathoning the TV show because I want to get to the seasons where Benjamin Browder and Claudia Black are in it.
Great additions.
I'm a huge fan of Farscape, is what I have to say.
Man, Farscape is so good. I should watch that again. Is that available to stream anywhere?
I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, really?
I would have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's where I watched it the last time I watched it. Was on Amazon.
Benjamin Browder is just like such a likable character. He has like a charisma that I feel like is rare.
Yeah, and they do like some really interesting like experimental things with that show, like from time to time. Like there's an episode that's like a cartoon.
I remember that.
Yeah, they do some crazy things with it, and it is like if you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, like famously,
that's a great point.
The director of that movie was like, Farscape is like one of the big inspirations for Guardians of the Galaxy. So go back and watch that show if you haven't. And on that note, I guess
it's going to wrap it up, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead and follow us at Starside Cafe on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.